let's look back again to where we are coming from. Because now I want to repeat the word again. We are prisoners of European war, so they use us the way they want after our encounter and we have never been able to rise from the dust. Now, what do you think Africa needed to have done to save themselves from the European incursion?
Yeah, so basically, what I would say is, uh, you know, sometimes some things happen in life for reality to turn out in a different way, and then for change to really happen. So when we say, where did we go wrong? We cannot, I cannot really, I would say that it's something that anchors on self-worth, the sense of self-worth. And what is self-worth? Self-worth is the collection of your capabilities. That's your intelligence in a concrete form. Your intelligence in your concrete form. If you are an engineer, if you go to school and then you study engineering, but you've not practiced engineering, if you're brought to a company where you have to practice engineering, you're not going to have a self-worth to actually prove that you are able to do this. You get the point? So you're going to be suffering from a low sense of self-worth. So I think probably because of course, I was not in existence when these things happened. And even the little information that we have about how most of these things transpired, the wars transpired, and eventually we lost our own civilization partially. We lost it. The information we have, most of them were what the Europeans actually narrated, and others were from archaeological facts that we get. But I think majority of what happened, like I told you in the early part, was that these people were more sophisticated in their civilization because they have really advanced their civilization because of their unique circumstance, which is not something, so it's more of a question of the luck of evolutionary luck. You find yourself in an environment that empowers you with more capabilities to be able to fight wars, win them, develop better tools, and then to come and then to conquer others. Because you notice that even when Christianity was being preached in Africa and in most African countries, it was preached with also the gun. You get the point? It was also preached with the gun because as though it wasn't like people were just, as of course, Muslim came with crusade into Africa. So you had to agree, you had to believe or you are killed. The same was also in some parts with Christianity. You had to believe or you were killed. So it was a question of a disempowerment on two levels: mental disempowerment and physical disempowerment, which comes from a low self-worth. The mental disempowerment was a more sophisticated ideological system, which came from the ability to craft a message in a way, is what I call, is part of the process that I go with some of my students in a coaching session on an individual level. We develop what we call a meta idea. A meta idea is a master idea that you develop. It's what I help them to go through so that they're able to develop that, to help them to go through life, to be able to solve problems. And it actually makes them, it literally makes you invincible. So a meta idea is the ability to develop a master idea that is able to decode and override any disempowering idea that you have that was gonna assail you in the course of your work or your life. You get a point? It's what I call a meta idea. So I think it's a sophisticated idea that can decode another idea and override it. Now it doesn't matter whether the idea that it is decoding and overriding is the same with it. It's just that it's more sophisticated in its ability to do that. So I think on a mental level, this was what the Europeans had. Because of the competition that has been going on, they have become so sophisticated in their idea. They have developed a very rich, like I told you, a very rich data sets of information about religion, culture. So they call it their own way they organize their society, democracy, quite sophisticated in its sense. and also the religion, Christianity and Islam, quite also sophisticated in its own right. Now, what they were able to do was to bring it to Africa, and we were able to use it to decode and override our own system. Even though we are also practicing those kind of things, the same belief structure was in place with what they brought. If you decode the Christian belief structure and decode the African traditional religion, its belief structure, you find out that to a large extent, the trappings are almost the same. The other point, in Igbo, they have the big god. It's called Chukwu, the big god. And I know in your place also, they have something like that. And then they have the smaller gods. In the Christian religion, which is though largely monotheistic, you also have other, you have the sense, you have other distance, you have the concept of the Trinity. All of these things, you see them in different cultural systems and in different religions. But what they were able to do was, because they had the other aspect, which was also the guns and the also sophisticated way to organize the society. Of course, they talk about democracy and republicanism. If you come down to Nigeria, the Igbos were practicing republic system of government. You understand? An egalitarian system of government. But they were able to develop a meta idea that they were able to use to decode and override ours. So on an ideological level, we were able to do that. This was where we got it wrong. Not being able to recognize that this thing that they were bringing to us was almost the same thing, almost the same they were practicing, and which none of them was more sophisticated. That theirs were no more effective than ours. That was on the one side. Now, notice something that happened when this religion or cultural system, when they tried teaching it, and in parts of African culture or African society where they were resisted, where people actually realized this on an ideological level and resisted it, what did they resort to? They resorted to violence, to weapons, using their guns. And in that aspect, they had actually developed advanced weapons because of their long usage, because of where they're coming from, because of they have been able to develop more sophisticated weapons than us, than our forefathers, not us now, than our forefathers. So they were able to use it to override. So in places where if they show you the Bible and teach you and you don't become docile, they use the gun on you, they use force on you, and then you have to agree, and they take you into slavery. So in retrospect, what are we going to do so that these things don't repeat itself? Because that's the point. It begins with developing an idea that is sophisticated enough that it can decode and override whatever idea, any other idea that anybody is bringing to you. Before, when societies are overrun and conquered, is when their ideological philosophy actually fails. That is when it actually happens. So which means if a subsistent idea is able to decode and override yours, then automatically you'll be conquered. If they will even use weapons to conquer you and all of that. So that is what I try to help the individual to do on an individual level, to develop that sophisticated, and it comes from your own identity. So it becomes from you decoding who you are. Because if it's built on the foundation of who you are, and you use that to create an identity for yourself, then it becomes very difficult for another person to come and uproot it and destroy it and neutralize it. It becomes very difficult.
Thank you so much. Now, what would be your last statement to conclude the conversation? I cannot even thank you enough. This is a full lecture.
All right. On a conclusion, in conclusion, what I would say is time is running out. The first industrial revolution has happened. The second industrial revolution happened. Third industrial revolution happened. You're actually in the third industrial revolution. And with the level of emerging technologies that are coming into place, like I told you, if you're going to develop a future, if you're going to imagine a future, better future, you have to be able to create it from a huge reservoir of a data set of memories. Now, Africans, we have enough memories. It's just that we are unaware of it. Just like that, your father that has 5 billion in his account and real estate investments and all of that. It's just that you are unaware of this, what your father already has. So the journey I take people on is to help them to uncover what your father left behind for you. And then from there, you create your own identity from who you are, from what you're seeing around you now, from your own environment now. You create that. So first of all, you discover that, and then you create yours, and then you use it to imagine a better future. So the emerging technologies that are coming in board, that are coming in place, they are so sophisticated that if we are unable to latch on to this fourth industrial revolution that is happening and create the technologies that actually reflect our own names and our identity, who we are, because we need to create a technology that reflects who we are. The phones and the technologies that we're using today is a reflection of the West. That is why when you look at your computer, it speaks American English. When you type it, you speak American English, the Roman numerals, the keyboard, everything is designed in their own image and likeness. We have to define a technology that actually reflects us. And the world we're entering into is a world that is going to be run by the superiority of ideas and technology. Ideas manifested in technology. The person who has the most sophisticated technology will rule. This time around, in the first industrial revolution and the second industrial revolution and the third industrial revolution that happened, the people who lost out, who were not able to develop their own technologies, their own sophisticated technology, lost out, and they became the slaves. In the second and the third industrial revolution, they actually became the factory workers. In the fourth industrial revolution, people who miss out, they're not going to become the slaves. They're not going to become the workers. They will go into extinction. Because at that time, the level of technology that will be in place will be so advanced and sophisticated that the technology will be automated and will become self-conscious on its own and will be able to run its own system that it will not need the people who are unable to develop theirs. So my program is a call to help upgrade human intelligence, starting from the Africans, so that we're able to develop the kind of a technology that suits our own identity, so that we can be able to create the future that we want. We can be able to imagine it and then create it. So going forward, this is a matter of life and death. We are fast going into extinction. I saw a research some time ago that predicted that I think the Igbo language and most local dialects in Nigeria will go into extinction. I think it was 2030 or 25. Now, those estimates might not be really realistic, within that time frame. But from the rate of what is happening now, the way my sister's children are speaking English, and their mother tongue, they don't even know how to speak it. Their children and their children's children will be reading Igbo and other local languages, like the dead languages like Latin, in books. And with that obliteration comes a huge obliteration of their identity. So if a meme overrides another meme, what happens is that the people who come up, even though they might have black skin, but they will be actually Europeans. They'll be carriers of the philosophy and the ideologies of the European. And they're not going to be anything like the African. So which means the African will eventually go into extinction. We don't want this. So you have a responsibility as an individual to begin the process of this identity authoring, to start authoring your own identity, because it's from your own identity that your children are going to create their own identity and be able to imagine and create a better future. So we're getting into a time and an age where technology is people who have the most superior ideas will create the most superior technologies. And my work is focused on helping Africans to create an identity that allow them to be able to develop ideas that will develop their own technologies going forward. So it's a call to arms, it's a call, not maybe violent arm, but battle of ideas, battle of identity is a call. It's a sacred mission. It's a holy war that we have to engage in. You have to save yourself by understanding yourself.
Thank you so much. This is really very powerful.